Hi everyone, welcome back to the Diasporic Nigerian. This is part of our Nigerian Professionals in Canada series. And in today's interview, we're meeting no other person than Hamzat Balogun, who is the founder and CEO of Sovrygn. Sovrygn specializes in watches and accessories. They officially started in January 2018, and the establishment was inspired by their fascination with time and the machines that represent its irrevocable essence. Wow, English is hard. Anyway, how's that? How are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So tell us a little bit more about, Sovrygn, how it started. I know you love timepieces, but tell us the backstory here.
So I was having a conversation with one of my friends the other day, and he asked me a very similar question. And I was thinking to myself, like, if I decided not to be too, let me say, humble about it, I probably started doing stuff like this maybe since primary school. Because my dad always liked like watches and all that stuff. So whenever he'll travel and bring stuff like that back, either as gifts or for himself, it's one of those things where I want to look at it and see what's this new timepiece is brought back this time, or how exactly does this work and what makes this different from the other one. And it's just been uphill from there, like different timepieces. And then I was got to a position where it's like now I'm able to buy mine, and after that, then it got to a position where it's like, okay, now I can start developing mine. And it's been nice. It has its ups and downs, but overall, I would say it's one of the things that's kept me going. And in the famous word people use, purpose, I think this is one of the things that I would consider as my purpose so far.
Okay, look at that. Inspirational. I was gonna ask you that question at the end, but it's okay that you've already answered that. So usually before we properly start the interview, I like to ask a couple icebreaker questions. Also,
Mhm.
fun fact for everyone watching, I've actually known Hamzat since primary school. I don't know how many years now, but I've known him for a while. So I know that you like to travel. I know you traveled recently, but post-COVID, where's the first place you want to travel to?
So earlier this year, I was supposed to actually go to Dubai, but because of COVID, that didn't happen. So that's probably one place I'll be thinking of going to. Um, I think that's probably about it for now. Is there any other place? Is there any other place? I don't know. I feel like most of the places in Europe I've like felt like I want to travel to. I read so much about them in books, so it's like I have sort of a mental picture of them, and some of the pictures were not so good. So I probably would have to see for myself eventually. But yeah, probably Dubai at some point when all this is over.
Yeah, that's fair. I like Dubai too. I just want to know why Nigerians go to Dubai a lot, and I just want to go there to experience. Maybe I will know why Nigerians like to go there, you know?
I feel like maybe it's one of the places where you can get like visas and stuff without issues on like coming or going to the US. That's a completely different
That's fair.
discussion.
That's fair. So tell us about your watches. Like, what's the first one you created? How long did it take you to do that?
So that's the one in the painting right behind me.
Mhm.
So that was our Imperial collection. That took me about, I would say, 6 months. Um, that was sort of easy initially, but I think it gets tricky when you're doing stuff like that and you start off with stuff like that and you get successful. Then the next thing that comes to your mind is you have to surpass that level where you're at and get it to the next level. And that's where it gets tricky because you either end up overdoing stuff or doing underwhelming stuff. And so trying to find that balance is very, very important. But yeah, so that took 6 months. And after that, I I created another collection last year, sometime in the middle of COVID. And I'm currently working on another one now that's probably come out next year, uh, hopefully.
So that's three different collections.
So far, yeah, for the watches at least, yeah.
So how many designs in total have you made?
Whew. The three collections are three designs, but there are some that I actually have drawn in my like sketch pad that are probably going to be from maybe another year from now, 2 years from now. Uh, I just like to do it that way when I have sort of the inspiration for it, so I don't get sort of complacent or tired, or when the time comes for that, I start thinking too hard and not actually meeting up to expectations. So I have maybe 2 or 3 more in my journal that I have like sketched down, but I just haven't really got into like putting them into production.
Look at you, look at you. And the watches that you make, are they all unisex watches?
So from what I realized, I feel like lately, at least from my observation, people don't really fancy very big watches anymore. Like I had one of my watches, I think it was probably the biggest one in my collection, and I had to let it go yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
There is a fine line between wearing something that's presentable and something that people will see and be like, oh, that's outrageous. So right now, I feel like women wear almost similar sizes to men's watches as opposed to back in the day. I remember some of my mom's watches were like very, very tiny, and you would have to really strain your eyes to actually see the time in them. And from what I've seen so far from like some of the other brands as well, you can see women's watches are quite similar to men's watches. Size wise is usually around the same thing. So I just try to find a balance there where it's like a guy can wear it and a woman can wear it, and you'll be surprised how many guys have very small wrists. So that kind of just creates that balance there and it makes it work.
That is so interesting. But I do think that this is a very unique path because I don't know if I've seen anybody. Like, usually the people that make watches are like the big names that we all know. And I don't think I've seen any other person like decide to do this. So like what exactly is your motivation to keep doing this? Just considering that I don't want to
Uh,
say the lonely path, but
mhm.
there are people that you've met since you started this, but what has been your motivation to keep going?
Um, there was something I read some about the other day about when something is, let me use the word purpose. I don't like using that word a lot. It becomes easy for you. You don't have to. You will still have to do the work, but you wouldn't feel like you have to push yourself too much, or there's this external force that you have to work with to make this work and all those kind of things. And I feel like for me, that's been the one thing. So maybe I can have a bad day at work and I go back home and I start working on my business. That's one thing that keeps me going. I had a period of time where I didn't like my job for almost 2 years, and that was probably one of the times in my life I don't even want to go back to. But just going back to work on my business and being there and solving all those problems, like the moment I start making progress there, that gives me a certain level of happiness. One of the reasons why people don't go into it, or a lot of people are not doing it, is it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. It's expensive to get started. It's the people who love watches are very, they can be a bit extreme sometimes. So that's something you have to be aware of. So you're dealing with like a lot of emotions and a lot of different personalities and all those different things. Some people appreciate things in a different way. Some people speak in a different way. People from different cultures. So like it's just a lot to balance sometimes. But for me right now, I think the one thing I just enjoy the process so far and learning all these new things. Like before I started, I didn't know how to take pictures. That picture was something I took in my living room and I had someone print it onto a canvas and all these little things. And I think one of the most important things for me now is being able to take that now and share with other people. Like if I see someone who's trying to start a business, they need a website, I can tell them, okay, if you need help, let me know. And I'll not, you know, I'm not guaranteeing you all my time, but at least I'll give you some valuable time and show you all the necessary things that you might need to, at least get from where you are to like a better place. So I think just those little things are stuff that keep me motivated to just keep doing it.
Okay. And I know you had a Kickstarter campaign a while back. So what was that campaign about?
So that was for the first collection. That was in June of 2018 or 19. I just realized how much time has passed since 2018, and it's interesting. But yeah, so that was to get started. So usually, what people do on Kickstarter is it's almost like a confirmation of success for whatever project you're working on. So you take your project, you share with like a community of people who are potential customers or who have potential interest in that kind of product, and you have a duration of time where you have to put it on Kickstarter. You have a goal, at the end of that time period, you have to meet that goal or else. So it's pretty much all or nothing. So you have people who are going to either pre-order your stuff. If you don't reach your goal at the end of that time period you set, the money goes back to those people. And yeah, so it helps like entrepreneurs and people who are like businesses which require very high risk, like mine, and high funding to get started. So that way, you don't maybe go get a loan from a bank or something, or go borrow some money from someone, and then you have all this inventory and you're unable to sell it for whatever reason. So that almost takes away that risk for you potentially. And even if you still have to invest some money, you wouldn't have to invest as much as say maybe 100,000, for example, and not get any returns on that money. So it makes life easier, and I think it just creates more opportunity for like entrepreneurs to be able to like realize their goals and like their dreams and bring projects to life.
Okay, look at me learning things. I'm here for this. I was just like, oh, interesting. Okay, okay. So in all the collections that you've made, do you have a favorite watch?
Right now,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be the one I'm working on right now that I'm supposed to release next year. Um, there is something about complicated watches I highly appreciate, just because for me it's like trying to fathom all that stuff that's going on in there and how all those pieces come together to actually work. It's because I've tried to take apart some of like my watches sometimes and just see what's going on in there. And taking it apart is easy, but when you actually try to put it back, that's when you realize, oh, this is no small feat at all. And for me, I sort of have a fascination with how computers work, how the brain works. So all those things almost sort of are intertwined. And in the new collection that I'm working on now, so that has 5 complications. So a complication is all the other additional functionalities that a watch actually has, apart from telling the time. So it has a date, it has a 24-hour timer, it has a calendar, so like a month and day, and then it has a power reserve. So basically, the power reserve is just like an indicator to show you this is how much power your watch has left till it stops, because the watches don't use batteries. But I think that would be the most interesting one so far, because that has more complications than the other one. The first one had just two, a moon phase and a date, but this one now has 5. So I like the way it's come together so far, and I'm about to start developing the prototypes in the next few months, and I'm very excited to share that when it's available.
This is also interesting to me, to be honest. I know that you had a watch that had, was it the Nigerian Confluence or something? What's the name of that one? What was that? And is
So
it still
that's
available on
the
your website?
so that one is currently sold out. That's the successor collection. So that's this one I was wearing now. So the lines on it are actually from the map of Nigeria, just showing the hydrological regions. So basically, for me, the inspiration behind that one is, I know usually when artists make artwork, at some point or in a painting or a drawing, they usually have like a signature on it. And I didn't want to put my name on this one, like bold on it or whatever, just so it does. I found that was a bit too egotistic in a way, or like cocky kind of thing. So I was like, okay, why not put something that's actually that I can relate to and other people can relate to, that actually, represents me as a person. So that's why I eventually took that.
So why did you go with the name Sovrygn? Is there any big story there?
Um, Honestly, with the way these things work for me sometimes, I would love to say there was a big story or there was some sort of epiphany there, but I usually have moments where I have different projects and aspects of my business I'm working on, and certain things I'm able to make decisions like on the fly and just decide that this is what it is and go with it. For this one, I sat down and I was thinking about the name, but I noticed over the period of time where I gave myself to figure out like a name I was going to go with, Sovrygn stuck to me just because of what it meant, like excellence and like superiority and all those different good things. And I think the only other thing that came to my mind was, how do I, like spell this or like put it so it actually I can create a brand out of it. And when I was creating my logo as well, by the time the logo was done, I was like, okay, this also creates opportunity for me to expand into like other products like accessories and all these different things. And that was just like, I think this is the perfect thing. But Honestly, I don't think there's a big story. A lot of the time people use their names, but like, Nigerian names are very long. So now they're probably taking the whole face of the watch and and I didn't want that. So I was like, what, I'll just stick with Sovereign and yeah.
Okay, okay. And are there other people in the community that you've worked with, or are there any other brands that you've worked with?
Not so. Okay, I've worked with not brands, but I've worked with the foundation in Nigeria, the Imani Foundation. So I usually just reach out to them at different points in the year and we do collaborations for like people in like very low income areas and maybe during Christmas or like during different holidays. And we just try to get things out there to people just to put a smile on their face. Recently, I had a collaboration with Never Settle. So that's from GZ and we had a little collaboration recently and I just think for me, I think one of the most important things so far is what this helps me accomplish. So like having a brand and all is nice, but for me, when I look at it, it's like, okay, I can take this and now affect this group of people or affect this group of people in a way that I probably wouldn't have been able to do before. So I look to do a lot of that. In terms of brands, I haven't really looked out that much to say, okay, this is a brand I would like to work with for whatever reason. Some of the brands or a lot of them that I might have considered are probably in the US. I know one person I talked to recently, I think sometime last year, was DG Kalakota brand. And we're talking about a collaboration at some point,
Dude,
but
that
we
would
haven't.
be such a good, I can see it. That would be so good.
So we haven't really dug in depth to it because the last time we spoke, we sat down and we talked about all the challenges we face in like business and all these different things. And we're just thinking about like maybe a collaboration at some point. Um, we haven't really talked much about it in detail, but it's something I would definitely like to do. And I like what he's doing with his brand. So
I want to see that. It's just so cool. Like
we'll work on it.
I can see his brand and I can see your brand, and I'm just like, yes, that's gonna
We'll
work
work on
so
it.
well.
Yeah.
All right. I have a scenario question for you. So,
Okay.
as someone who designs all those watches, if you had to choose between a leather or a metal strap, which one would you go with and why?
That's a good question. So for my brand now, what I try to do is I offer both options. So I have for every collection, there's usually a metal strap and then there's a leather strap. Reason being, in the winter, especially in Canada, it's easier to sort of maintain a leather strap because you don't get cold. But in the winter, if you think about wearing like a steel strap, that's going to be cold the whole day and it's just going to be inconvenience. And, you don't want to be wearing a watch and start thinking of taking it off every time just to go outside, that kind of thing. So I usually try to just create that balance there and offer both. Same thing with the leather strap. If you wear a leather strap in the summer because of sweats, the heat, and all those things, it starts to diminish very, very quickly, as opposed to like the metal strap. So I try to offer both, but if I only had to pick one, so with the leather straps I offer, they have what we call a deployment class. And that's one of the things I usually see in like a lot of luxury watches. So it's not like a regular buckle. Let me grab one from one of my watches here. And I just find it gives the watches a certain character. So when it's not like a regular stock buckle you see on every other watch. So this is what it looks like. And to close, you have to do this and this, and that's what the back of it looks like.
Okay.
So that's from one of the collections as well. Okay. So I would prefer this because you can either dress it up or dress it down. So this would definitely be my go-to.
Okay. So is that one still available on your website? Because everything's sold out on your website.
Everything is sold out right now. Thankfully, I started working on the accessories when I was in Miami. So those are getting ready. They should be available, but this is May 17th or 16th. But between now and the end of the month, I should have received those and I'll start working on putting them on the website. But between now and the end of June, the accessories will be on the website because the watches are sold out right now. And I want to sort of focus more of my attention on the newer ones right now and just the other ones will eventually come back. But
okay,
the newer ones are my focus right now.
Okay, that's fair. I have somebody who's like been waiting on this interview because they want to learn more and potentially buy a watch. So they will be happy to hear when You know that new collection is going to be coming out.
Yeah, they should let me know, and you can always subscribe to the email list on my website. I promise I wouldn't spam you. Um,
Important.
when you do that, so whenever I release a new collection, those people always get notified first, and hopefully it doesn't get sold out before you get there. But get notified first, and I usually offer some sort of discount as like an incentive, just to it's almost like a payment for their loyalty and like dedication to the brand type of thing. So it's almost like giving back. But
Right. So I know at the beginning you said that this has not necessarily been an easy process. So what are some highlights and what are some lowlights that you faced throughout this whole process?
um, so I think before I started this whole thing, I used to watch interviews about like artists and people who make music, and sometimes you hear them say they don't really care how much their album sells and that kind of thing. And in my mind, I'm like, to me, that shows the level of impact you're making. So if you don't care about that stuff, it's almost like saying you don't care about the work you're doing, and that defeats the purpose for me. So I think when I started receiving recognition from places I didn't even think I would receive recognition from, I shipped watches to Malaysia, Japan, Philippines, all these different places. And never in a million years would you have asked me, and I would have told you that those are the places I was actually thinking I'd have been able to ship watches to. And then you start receiving invitations from like big brands. So like I had a feature in GQ, I had one in Oracle Time magazine. If you had asked me, I had no idea how those things worked or how people got on those things and that kind of thing, right? So I think it was very important to me at that point, and it almost like reinforced it in me that okay, you must be doing something good for them to be reaching out to you, to be featured in their magazines and all those different things. And in terms of lows, those okay, so I think after the first collection, I started working on some accessories, and let me say I got too excited and I didn't spend enough time working on the actual process and thinking about all the things that would work and wouldn't work. And by the time I decided to go into like the prototype phase and had them produced and everything, by the time I received them, they almost all had one issue or the other that if I had only spent some time on, I would have been able to think about it or figure out or maybe even discuss about it with someone and they will tell me, oh, maybe this might not work for whatever reason. So that's been one of the I think that's been one of the lowest lows because for me it was like it's something I was working on, excited after spending all this money and investing all this time doing it, and then boom, you are here, no results, nothing to show for it, and you still have to keep going, and that's money down the drain. So it's tricky. So for me now, whenever I'm working on a collection, I usually share with people and discuss with people. I know sometimes people are usually very skeptical discussing their ideas, especially when it's not something they've already started working like producing, and they start thinking, oh, someone is going to steal your idea. But I'm like, I would really, really, really advise that you do that because it almost gives you a different perspective. It's almost like when you're in school and you're explaining or teaching someone something and it's like reinforcing that thing in your mind. Maybe something you probably didn't even think of before. You're able to that somehow, some way, that thing will come up in your mind and you're able to figure out that problem. But it takes time, it takes practice, it takes trust, and you don't just show it to anyone. So I think it was a nice learning experience, an expensive one, but I'm grateful for it. And I think I've strayed away from that sort of behavior.
You learn as you go. So what
Yep.
additional advice do you have for entrepreneurs just like yourself?
So this is one I thought about for a long time, and I wrote down a bunch of things here. So permit me to read all these things. uh, so one of them is you would eventually have to take on a lot of responsibilities. So you would have to wear many hats. So like when I was starting out, I was my photographer, I was my model, I was all these different things for myself. I had my website designed by myself, all these different things I had to do. It's probably going to take you longer than someone else who has maybe a bigger team of people taking care of all those different things. But I think the beauty of it is you become almost self-sufficient in a way where you know that even if something goes wrong or someone doesn't show up, you're there to like fill in that space, right? So that's one of the very things I would advise people to do is don't shy away from learning new stuff if you have to. And there is something the Totex call mitote, and it's almost like having all these many voices in your head or having different people chiming in and telling you, oh, do this, do this, do this, do this. And that creates chaos in your mind. And if you're not careful, it's something that can push you and lead you away from what your actual brand goal is or what your end goal is. And you might not realize it in time, and before you know it, you're almost implementing other people's ideas and focusing on other people's goals they had for what they would have done if they were in your shoes as opposed to what you're doing. And yeah, don't try to please everybody. Make sure you're very sure of what your brand goal is, what your why is, and stick to that. The right people will come. And if you find there are people that don't like where you're going with it, that's totally fine as well. I don't think there's anyone or any brand in this world that's been able to please everyone. So, just do you, and the right people will follow you. And that's that. Don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Partnership is very, 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 very important. And there's the last one. Let's see. I made sure of that one. Okay, yeah. So always do your best. So these are already in the book. It's called The Four Agreements. So always do your best. Don't take anything personal. Be impeccable with your word, and don't make assumptions. That last one, I think, is one of my biggest go-tos whenever I'm doing anything, because there's so much going on, so much information, and if you're not very careful, you start making assumptions based off of someone else's reality and all these different things, and it ends up corrupting your own, and you tend to almost lose yourself or your brand image and all these different things. So it's I take those things very importantly and try to maintain that part as much as I can. Yeah.
Look at you with like notes and notes of advice. I'm here for it. But I think on that same note, it seems to me that for, self-development, I think you read a lot of books. What else do you do for self-development? What are some books that you think other entrepreneurs should be reading? And then after that, when do you get time for self-care and what does that look like for you?
For self-development, I do a lot of reading, like a lot of reading. My table is a mess now. I've showed you all the books I have here. Some of them I have read and some of them I haven't. But uh, usually I just tend to look into other people who have done other things in their life and be successful at what they're doing. And based off of that, so let's say, for example, I find a good author, for example. So I would almost buy almost all their books, or at least the ones someone has recommended, and just go through those ones. So one author I like that is Paulo Coelho. Another one is Mitch Albom. Currently, I have a bunch of Robert Greene books, so like 48 Laws of Power, 33 Strategies of War, The Laws of Human Nature. That one I was just about to finish. And which other ones? There's a book I read and I think would be very, very important for entrepreneurs. It's called No Ego. That one, my manager at work recommended it to me. Uh, but basically, it's just a book on taking ownership and not necessarily looking outward and saying, oh, this is like, look at the things you're able to control and not things that are out of your control and start worrying about that. But that's a book I plan on reading again, and it's one of the ones I really liked. The 50th Law, so that was Robert Greene and 50 Cent. That one's about fear. That one I've read several times. I actually liked it. Think and Grow Rich is another one I really enjoyed. I probably read, that was probably the first book I read. Um, I think I can remember very clearly when I was going to do my medicals before coming to Canada. I had that book with me and I was reading it on my way back from Lagos. But yeah, those are some of the books I've read so far. Some of the ones I have unread: Multiple Intelligences, The Supreme Gift. Another one I would recommend is The Archer. So that's also by Paulo Coelho as well. Which other ones? So that's just a bunch of self books I've read or personal development. In terms of self-care, what do I usually do? So I try to watch movies from time to time. I'm not very picky with movies, so I can watch the worst of movies, especially when I don't have stuff to do. I just feel like I need to wind down. But because I spend a lot of time on my laptop or my phone trying to get either actual job stuff done, my business stuff done, I'm trying to reduce my screen time these days just for the sake of my eyes. So I try to read something that has a bit of like fiction in it. And what I find is when I start reading books like that, it takes me to like a different reality. So it's like I'm able to see things in a different place. So that helps a lot. But otherwise, I think I live a very simple life. I just work. I usually work out, so that definitely helps wind down as well. But other than that, if I have stuff to do, I'll get it done. If I don't, maybe go for a walk or something. Just something simple. I'm not a very complex person, let me put it that way. I think that's why I like to make my watches complex.
That's very interesting. So where can we find out more about you? What's your website, your Instagram, all that good stuff?
So for my website, for my watches, it's sovrygn.com. So sovrygn.com. So you can also find me at sovrygn.watches.com. That's one of them. And for my Instagram as well, it's just Sovrygn. So it's Sovrygn. Facebook, same thing, Sovrygn Watches. And I want to give out my personal Instagram for help with questions and stuff like that about like website and stuff. That's going to get very tricky very fast. So
That's okay.
that's going to get tricky very fast.
We'll go to all your professional pages.
But yeah, if you go to sovrygn.com, same thing on YouTube. I usually post like how to for the watches, like how to set the time, how to care for the watches, and all those different things. And but yeah, if you just go on Google and type in Sovrygn, Sovrygn, you'll definitely find me. And,
right.
I have a live chat on the website, so if you have any questions, shoot. And there's also a contact us page as well.
Okay, look at you getting your SEO up. I'm here for it. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this interview. I just want to say thank you so much for taking time to do this. I know we tried to do it 3 times. We finally got through. We're finally doing this, and I'm happy. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a great night.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the work you've been doing so far for the Nigerians in diaspora. Okay. Really, really appreciate it, and keep doing the good stuff.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.